everybody, Foley here. Welcome to the weekly news recap for the 4th, I think, to the 17th, something like that. 2 weeks, anyway. And I need to let myself up a little bit. It's been a while. Okay, anyway. So 2 weeks ago, Nintendo had a Nintendo Direct where they talked about the next Star Fox for the Nintendo Switch 2. And for the looks of things, they're doing Star Fox 2 again. I just realized my microphone is all the way over here. Let's try this again. So, weekly news recap, 4th to 17th May, whatever. Anyway, Star Fox 2, again, for the Nintendo Switch 2. Again, there's not a massive amount of gameplay in this trailer. The Switch Direct goes into a little bit more detail, but not a massive amount. I think a lot has been made about the game's art design. I think it's fine. I think maybe some people saw, Fox McCloud in the Super Mario Galaxy movie and thought, he looked pretty good there. Why don't you just make him look like that? I disagree, mostly because the film is about making something homogenous so that any character could kind of fit in. Whereas Star Fox, originally anyway, if you look at the box art for like Star Fox 1, Star Fox 2, they're puppets. They're meant to kind of look like not Muppets exactly, but they're meant to look like they're like felt puppet, like stop motion kind of thing. And I think that's kind of what they're going for here. I think that's kind of the gist of it. I know some people don't like it, but I think it's fine. Anyway, is there any actual gameplay? I don't remember now. I feel like if there was, it's like very little. Yeah, there's very little. Anyway, Star Fox 2, I don't think it had a release date. Anyway, moving on. We are going to be ripping through this video, though, guys, because I still have to pack. And I'm heading off very early in the morning, so I gotta do this fast. Anyway, Mina the Hollower is getting a release date. It's been 12 years since Shovel Knight, which was their first game, and then they've done a bunch of iterations on Shovel Knight, and then this will be their first new game in a very long time. 29th of May, it's basically next week. $20, pretty good price. Demo I quite enjoyed, and Yako Games make pretty good games, and if it continues to get the same kind of treatment as Shovel Knight did, there could be a fucking ton of content from Mina the Hollower. Dreams on a Pillow got a gameplay reveal, so you may not have heard about this game because a lot of outlets have been doing their best to squash it, but it is basically a game by a Palestinian developer, and it's kind of talking about a specific story that happened during the Nakba. I think it's kind of like a folklore tale where this woman goes back into town after it's been like set on fire and there's smoke everywhere, and she goes to grab her baby. She grabs like a bundle of clothing, assuming it is her child, and she comes back out and finds that it wasn't. She actually just grabbed a bunch of towels. And it's very sad, but I think that's kind of the gist of what the game's going for. So I have backed this. It's not a Kickstarter because Kickstarter wouldn't take it. So I have backed it, so that's, disclosure. It looks like it's going for like a stealth mechanic kind of thing. Alright, no, she doesn't grab a bunch of towels, she grabs a pillow. That's why it's called Dreams on a Pillow. I forgot about that part. Anyway, no release date or anything like that because they're still trying to get some funding together for it. Anyway, moving on. Sinking City 2, speaking of Kickstarter, because this was kickstarted by Frogwares, Ukrainian developer, the guys behind the Sherlock games specifically, and the original Sinking City. Sinking City 2 showing off a bit of gameplay, and it does look like they're going for Resi remake, the Silent Hill remake. They're really going for the over-the-shoulder survival horror shooter vibe, but make it the 20s, 30s, whatever. I forget exactly when the game is set. Despite the character here looking an awful lot like the main character from the first game, I don't think it's the same guy. Potentially he's meant to just look the same. I don't remember the guy's fucking name is the problem. It might be, but like, considering how the first game ended, he shouldn't still be alive. Spoilers. Anyway, see a little bit of gameplay snippets here. Skip ahead, and yeah, it's going for the over-the-shoulder thing. Like, the original game had this a little bit, but it was very wonky. Like, the combat was absolutely the weakest part of the game. But to be fair to them, Frogwares had not really made that kind of game before, and it looks like they've must have gotten some developers in who know what they're doing. Hopefully, let's see if it works out a little bit better than what just happened to him. Anyway, I don't think they had a release date. Yeah, it's just summer at some point, which is the next 3 months or so. So maybe we'll see it. Truckun is warning me from another world. This is a very silly sounding game. This is basically the next thing from Strange Scaffold. Make a lot of games. Probably ones you might know best are I Am Your Beast and the one where you're like Max Payne fighting vampires. What the fuck's it called? El Paso Nowhere. Same developer. This time around, it is a sort of pseudo isekai kind of thing. So you're playing what's the name of these trucks? I forget the name of these trucks. But you're doing like truck driving things, a little bit Crazy Taxi, a little bit like Rampage kind of stuff. And the more of this you do, the better your friend in the other world does in their game. It's a very strange concept, but I think it's kind of fun. Wish lists don't have a release date or anything yet. Game Pass is the first wave from May, and at this point you've probably already seen us, but let's have a look at it anyway. Forza Horizon 6 already leaked, and if you paid for the extra early access, even though it's not really early access, but whatever, potentially you're already playing it. Ben 10 something, who cares? Descenders is boring SSX. Wheel World is kind of interesting indie cycle game. Wildgate I'm not familiar with. Wushang Fallen Feathers, we talked about it last week because it's joined the PlayStation Plus this month as well, but it is a Souls-like that had some weird censorship stuff coming from Chinese government. Mixtape was the discourse du jour. Don't really care about it myself, but it's like a music-based... not a music-based thing. It's like a visual novel, but it's set in like a certain period. It's the 60s maybe, 70s, no, 80s maybe, Australia, something like that. Outbound, it's a little bit, I was gonna say it's a little bit Firewatch, but it's a little bit more to it because there's kind of like base building and stuff. Black Jacket I'm not familiar with. Call of the Other Gods is a new release. We'll talk about that in the new releases section. Elite Dangerous isn't Eve, I think. Is it like the dogfighting spin-off of one of those games? Doom the Dark Ages, Doom 3, of the new trilogy. Maybe the weakest of the three, but still a good bit of fun. And then Subnautica 2 is in early access, and I assume it's an early access job for Game Pass as well. What is Black Jacket? Or Wildgate even. Wildgate is PvP, PvE. Tactical ship-to-ship combat. Oh, boring. For me, anyway. Outbound, Craftwork Stations. Okay, so it's a survival-y type thing. Why did I think it was a Firewatch type thing? Anyway. Black Jacket. Black Jacket drops you into a Purgatorio card game where restless souls wager their coins and the ferryman waits for his cut. Blackjack? Okay, so it's Blackjack. Is it Balatro Blackjack? Is that what it is? Okay. Elite Dangerous, Starship, do whatever it takes to survive. Okay, so it's not the spin-off, it's like the main sandbox thing. So not Eve, but like Eve, I think. Anyway, PlayStation Plus, game catalog. So this is the PlayStation Plus extra and premium tiers. Adding Star Wars Outlaws, this is the Ubisoft one that was mixed reactions when it was released. Red Dead Redemption 2 is coming back. Rockstar seems to take it in and out of PlayStation Plus for whatever reason. Thaumaturge is an interesting one. It's set in like alternate history Poland. Rasputin is your mentor type, or like a confidant kind of thing. and it's got like a little bit of Persona to it, I think, in that you fight alongside these kind of manifestations of people's emotions and stuff. Um, it's an interesting kind of blend of like a CRPG and a turn-based combat thing. Unlock the Siege of Dawn is a bit like a God of War type, the newer God of War games, but again, set in a kind of alternate history. Gods have effectively imposed their will on the people, and it's up to you and like Revolutionary War technology to take them on. I thought it was fine, except the final boss is absolute bullshit. And I feel like it just wasn't finished or wasn't balanced because it fights completely different to everything else in the game. And I absolutely did not finish it. I just went, nope, not banging my head against this boss. Bramble, the Mountain King, I think is like a Brothers Tale of Two Sons or Limbo kind of like puzzly adventure type thing. Broken Sword, is that the remaster? Is that the Shadows of the Templar remaster? Yeah, so it's the Shadows of the Templar reforged. I suppose it's technically a remake. Yeah, it's a very good point-and-click adventure, and I think they were doing like AI upscaling for some of the backgrounds, but I think, not sure if it's this one or if it's the next one, but they're planning to just redraw them instead. I forget which one it is exactly. And then Inotria is also being added, but they didn't mention it. Inotria is a Souls-like from an Italian developer. Time Crisis. How the fuck does Time Crisis work? So Time Crisis, for people who may or may not be familiar, 1997, Time Crisis was a light gun game. And we don't really have those anymore because nobody has CRT TVs anymore. But you would basically have a plastic gun, and the plastic gun would shoot an infrared laser, and that would be picked up by the TV's infrared laser receiver, I guess. I'm entirely exactly sure how CRT light gun games work, but the basically gist of it was you could point it at the screen and shoot, and you could use it as a light gun. And it's not really a thing anymore. Closest you'll get to it now is the Wii. So I guess you use like do you use like fucking motion controls with the controller or something like that? Does it say it? Home version, yeah, even the home version came with a gun, so gyro aiming, yeah, okay, so that's what they're doing. Converted from the PlayStation version to PS4, console surprise new added features. Okay, interesting. I'm kind of curious just to see how it works. Because it's going to be slow as fuck if you have to use a controller. So if it's like gyro controls, maybe that's a bit faster. Anyway, moving on. Also, some of the games you can play soon. Well, if you want to play something right now, Directive 8020, kind of been coming out forever. This is the latest Dark Pictures games. I think they've stopped calling it the Dark Pictures Anthology and are just calling it the Dark Pictures, a Dark Pictures game or something like that. Directive 8020 is basically the thing in space. So you're on a mission to go to like the nearest potentially human habitable planet. Something stowaways on the ship, starts taking over and killing members of the team and impersonating them, stuff like that. What's kind of interesting is the Dark Pictures games had been like a lot like the Until Dawn games or the Quarry and stuff like that. It was like quick time events, and there's a lot more real time elements in this game. Like there's like stealth aspects to it as well that aren't really quick time. Like there was stealth in the older games, but for the most part it was just press the button at the right time and everything's fine, or do a couple of mini games and you'll get past them without them seeing you. This time around it's like real time, like avoid their cone of vision, don't make noise, like that kind of thing. It's a lot closer to more involved experience, we'll say. Reviews have been positive, not like overwhelmingly amazing or anything, but certainly one of the better Dark Pictures. Moving on, Motor Slice. This is kind of interesting because I played the demo of this, and it's kind of a mix of Mirror's Edge, Prince of Persia, and like a bit of Shadow of the Colossus as well. So you play P, who is sent into this kind of industrial zone to take down all these construction, autonomous robot things. Shenanigans ensue, and then you're stuck fighting like these massive steamrollers and cranes and shit like that. That's the Shadow of the Colossus part. And then the Prince of Persia Mirror's Edge, that's a lot of parkour to get around. Demo was a lot of fun. I did feel that because the game world is like a construction zone, everything does kind of look the same. It's difficult to tell. Like if you saw a screenshot, would you be able to tell where in the game they are? Or, you know, how long into the game they are, something like that. Unless you saw the boss, I feel like you wouldn't. But otherwise, I thought it's a lot of fun. Call the Elder Gods. Call the Elder Gods I've actually played and finished. So this is the sequel to Call of the Sea, which is a kind of Cthulhu thing, but what if you weren't going insane and it was actually a good thing? Kind of thing. It's like a coming home, like the character you play is... has a bit more of a connection, natural connection to the like Cthulhu cult or the Dagon cult and stuff like that. Call the Elder Gods is a bit of a strange one because the tone is just kind of weird because it's presented as like, you know, Cthulhu, great old ones, everyone goes insane kind of thing, and yet is also a bit hammy, you know, a bit let's not take this very seriously. And I guess maybe they're trying to evoke the kind of pulp novels from like the 60s and stuff like that. I think that's kind of what they're going for. It just gives the game a weird vibe. Puzzles are really good, like some pretty involved, pretty tricky stuff. Not unlike the first game. First game, like the first half of it, the puzzles were fine, and then the second half they're like, oh, okay, actually turn my brain on for some of these. But yeah, overall I liked it, but I guess I just wanted it to be a bit grimmer. I suppose that's not really what they were going for. Will Follow the Light. Oof, yeah, I've played this one too. Played this with a girlfriend last weekend before that. Spent most of it just pissed off at the game, to be honest. I mean, in one case we were just like taking the piss out of the game, but so Will Follow the Light, your Will, lighthouse keeper, gone off in search of your father and your son, who've gone walkabouts somewhere in and around Iceland, the Icelandic Isles. Didn't know Iceland had multiple isles. Well, I suppose it does make sense. Anyway, it looks good. I'll give it that. And the sailing is pretty cool. The mechanics around it are maybe a bit too complex. And I think the developer was going for let's try to make this somewhat realistic. And I think they maybe verge a bit too far into the realistic side of things, because it gets to the point where I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why I'm picking up speed, why I'm not picking up speed, and so on. Puzzle-wise, they're a bit obscure. There was one puzzle where we had to put like a sail reel back together, and it's like a bunch of clockwork pieces, and there was just no help. no, like there's like this one picture of what it's supposed to look like when it's finished. It's like, that doesn't help. All these pieces look the exact fucking same. And even if you pick up a piece and try to put it somewhere, the character will just say, we don't need that piece right now. And it will transpire that that piece was actually not needed at all. It was fully just a red herring, and that's a bit shit. Like, for a later puzzle, fine, but this is like one of the first puzzles in the game, so yeah, it's a looker, and there's some interesting kind of like Icelandic scenes. Like there's a bit with the Aurora Borealis, not the steamed hams one, the real one. That was pretty cool. Like, there's some pretty great scenes, but the game part, not so much. Moving on. Vulture Scavengers of Death. This is a kind of interesting looking game. So this is like survival horror if it was XCOM. So you're dropped in to these zones, play two different characters, and the game plays out like a fairly typical, you know, survival horror, Resident Evil, whatever. But the gameplay and combat is sort of tactics based, like a TRPG, like Final Fantasy Tactics or XCOM. So it all takes place on a grid, and it's pretty interesting. Again, I had played the demo. I actually found it kind of challenging. Not sure if that was an early part of the game or a later part of the game, or if I just missed a bunch of shit. I did find out was low on ammo fairly often, which I guess is kind of what you want from a survival horror, but I think a lot of people are maybe more used to the later Resident Evils, where running out of ammo is like pretty rare. You know? Anyway. That's PC only, also. Anyway, unfortunately though, it is now time to talk about the worst part of video games. The video game industry. Now, I did say we're going to rip through this, and I do mean it, because that section took longer than I wanted it to. Anyway, so EA boasts record year thanks to Battlefield 6 and EA Sports FC. So this article is mostly saying EA's made a bunch of money on the things that they said were didn't perform well. They claimed they didn't perform well, and then they did a bunch of layoffs, and yet they've had the strongest net bookings of the fiscal year in Q4. That success comes off the back of job cuts. The company will not be hosting a conference call this quarter due to the Saudi Arabian sovereign wealth thing. Arguably, the layoffs were done to make the deal more enticing for the Saudi Arabian wealth fund, potentially. And then another note that various unions and the Canadian government are looking into the merger and thinking, hey, maybe this isn't a good thing. Maybe let's not do that. Speaking of unions, Psychonauts developer Double Fine, the latest Microsoft-owned studio to unionize. Again, this is another Microsoft developer unionizing, and I do find it interesting that so many of the video game unions you see happening are Microsoft. I was going to say Microsoft or Blizzard, but Blizzard is Microsoft now as well. So yeah, it seemingly is only Microsoft. No, it's not. There's like there's a Sega union, I think. There's a couple of smaller developers have unions. Ubisoft has a couple of unions as well. But it is somewhat telling, maybe, that so many of them are coming out of Microsoft. So Double Fine unionizing petition was filed with Microsoft and the National Labor Relations Board, Communication Workers of America, which is a pretty standard one now. We appreciate that Microsoft has taken a neutral approach and agreed not to interfere. This is coming off the back of the merger between Microsoft and Blizzard. And it was that there were a bunch of unions trying to form at the time in Blizzard, and it was somewhat not exactly a requirement, but in order to get the deal through, they did say they'd take a neutral approach to any unions trying to form. So this is kind of a continuation of that. And nicely, it's also going to include part-time developers. Not a lot of unions do that, so that is nice. One small piece of good news, it seems. Subnautica 2 has surpassed 2 million sales in 12 hours, which is also good news. And it is particularly good news for the developers, and particularly bad news for the publisher, Krafton, because as you may recall, Krafton was accused of delaying Subnautica 2 to avoid paying out a $250 million bonus if certain revenue targets were met. Those revenue targets had to be met in this current year. There was a bunch of shenanigans that came up in the trial. One of the CEOs or the C-suite, at least, were using ChatGPT to come up with legal reasons for how they could get around it when their own lawyer said, no, don't do that. Anyway, 2 million sales in 12 hours seems that they're probably on track to get that 250 million burnout. Good job, idiots. Anyway, moving on. Speaking of not making money, I guess. Nintendo talk plunges after disappointing Switch 2 forecast. Now, this is kind of interesting because while the forecast is unfavorable, and mostly this has to do with memory costs and the fact that the Switch 2 has gone up in price and so on, and that there aren't any major software announcements. It's just Star Fox, and even that was only very recently. And we don't really know anything beyond that. Like, this is the Yoshi game, but it seems like it's aimed mostly for very young children. But it's had a most significant decline in 3 months. Forecast estimate sales units for the Switch 2 console and so on for software. Nintendo's primary source of profits is its software, and that is declining. It indicates a weaker pull from its franchises. I wouldn't say that. It's that the franchises aren't there. You know, Tears of the Kingdom is still pretty recent. There was a Metroid game only fairly recently as well. As I said, Star Fox was only just announced. We're basically kind of waiting on a new Mario, effectively, at this point. Like, we're not going to get a new Legend of Zelda anytime soon. And considering how Metroid Prime 4 did, we probably won't get a new Metroid anytime soon either. Nintendo could do with some new IP, arguably, because it does seem it's very, very reliant now on Mario and to some extent Zelda. But I do find it interesting here because I'm not sure if it's mentioned in this article, but there's a mention of like the Nintendo Switch selling fucking ridiculous amounts of units earlier in the year. And having a disappointing forecast, and yet ignoring the fact that it sold almost historic levels earlier in the year. It's a bit like, make up your minds. Are you happy or are you not? The internet reacts to Xbox rebranding itself as Xbox. Yes, that happened. They changed it back. They changed it to all caps. Now you have to yell it when you say Xbox. I'm not going to do that because I live in an apartment complex and it's quite late. But yeah, there was a poll went out on what they wanted to call what they should call Xbox, because it was going to be like Microsoft Gaming for a while, and then it went back to Xbox, and now it's Xbox all caps. Anyway, people having fun with it. Xbox is Xbox. Gronk is the new Riz King. These kind of things. The cooler Daniel and stuff like that. Sting taking off his mask to reveal it's still Sting. Back to this is what I was looking for. Daniel and the cooler Daniel kind of stuff. It's dumb, and this is more of Asha Sharma coming in and kind of trimming the verge, as it were. Not addressing like the really big problems that Xbox has, and just doing a bunch of nonsense to make it look like some things are changing. Changing the name, undoing the Game Pass price increase, that kind of stuff. This is all just trying to get back to a status quo instead of addressing the lack of software for the title or for the unit. Amazon once again cancels the game. Why it keeps calling itself a games publisher? Has it actually published the game yet? Anyway, they cancelled that Lord of the Rings game. Another MMO. This is the second time they've tried to make a Lord of the Rings MMO and failed. Probably more frustrating is Amazon's push towards using generative AI in development. Prior to last year's layoffs, they basically tasked a developer with making a game entirely with AI. And when they did do that, they got laid off. So that's cool. Now, it was part of like the massive layoffs from last year, so arguably whether it was specifically for that reason or for cost-cutting measures, but even when you toe the line for something you really don't want to do, they still lay you off, so that's good shit. Anyway, particularly galling, saying that they're always guided by the creativity and judgment of our teams, and when they tell you they don't want to use AI, you ignore them. This is a Bank of America rep trying to push Take-Two to raise the price to $80 for GTA6, and basically saying that it would make it more difficult for other publishers to sell their games for $80 if GTA6 is only $70. That's it. That's all it is. No, like, because it would be worth that much money or anything like that. Putting the game's price up to $80 would be good, not only for the GTA makers, but the industry as a whole. Define industry, because it's not good for the consumer, who is part of the industry too. There's the other side of it, but okay. For Strauss Zelnick's part, he's not pushed on it. Talking about the GTA 6 release, though, he's a bit talking out both sides of his mouth. If your core consumer isn't there, if they're not served first and best, you kind of don't hit your other consumers. So this is him saying why it's not going to be on PC at the beginning. But then comes back to say that with regards to a big title, which GTA 6 absolutely would be, PC can be 45 to 50% of the sales, so your customers are there. Anyway, Mark Warren here, the author of this article, kind of does point out the obvious, that you really just want them to buy the game twice. So it's okay. You can say it. We know that's what you want. Consumers need to feel like the thing itself is amazing and the price they were charged was fair for what they get, which you could argue is shade thrown at other developers trying to charge $80 for a game that maybe isn't worth it. The industry, which is perceived as struggling, would have difficulty selling games for $80 if GTA 6 came out at $70. We think it's in Take-Two's self-interest, no it's not, as a publisher and partner to many developers to raise the price point for the entire industry. No. Like, GTA is going to sell. $70 or $80, it's going to sell regardless. All this is really going to do is bolster the rest of the industry to do it. And is that really in GTA's interest to make competition either? Oop. Anyway, moving on. PlayStation records. Speaking of industry struggling, I guess PlayStation records $765 million impairment loss from Bungie as operation income falls 41% in Q4. Now, that can't be because they just didn't put out any fucking games this year or last year. Anyway, lower PlayStation 5 unit sales for the year. They put the price up, was expected. Probably more noticeable, $765 million impairment from Bungie because Destiny 2 and Marathon are not meeting expectations, even though they say later on that Marathon is strong somewhere. I forget where this is. Somewhere in the article anyway, they're saying they're seeing strong engagement, I think is the word, which sounds like a euphemism, honestly. Non-first party software sales increased, so the vast majority of the money coming in for Sony, or the PlayStation side of things anyway, is coming from the 30% commission they get on everything. Not from their first party titles, and certainly not from their live service games. So yeah, they're gonna keep going though. Bungie's extraction shooter, engagement metrics such as retention also remain at a high level. We aim to improve the performance. Yeah, this can't be because you just bought a dud and it's not doing the numbers you wanted it to do. It's certainly not grandfathering all of the live service games they wanted to make. But it's cool though. They'll keep them propped up, but they'll close Japan Studio and they'll close Studio London. That's fine. That's cool. California bill pushing to keep games playable after server shutdown doesn't reflect how games actually work. ESA assert. So this is kind of a little bit of the stop killing games thing. So there's a bill going through California that will basically say that publishers should either offer a version of the game that can work independently of the publisher's servers, or an update or patch that delivers the exact same thing, or a full refund. The full refund I think they might find getting over a little bit difficult, but the other two really should be doable. ESA don't want to do any work. Could force developers to spend limited time and resources keeping old systems running instead of creating new games, features, and technology. Oh no, how could you make us support a product that we put on the market and charge money for? It's very shit of you. Anyway, it does seem that the California Assembly, who were part of this at least, didn't agree, because it has gone, or will be going, to a floor vote at some point soon. I say soon, this is politically soon. It's still like months. But it's interesting. Especially because California would be where a lot of developers are based. Having that enforced there potentially could have been enforced in the US, and if it's enforced in the US, you might potentially get it enforced in other territories. So this is a nice opinion piece. There's a couple of stories coming out. Sony, not seeing the return on games as a service, and that they're largely moving away from them. They shut down a ton of them. Sega saying that they have also cancelled their last big, what do they call it, a super game? Whatever that was going to be. Last week they said that, yeah, they cancelled it, and developers have been moving on to different projects. So this is an opinion piece by Rob Fahey, kind of just talking about how the live service stuff is just not working out, and continuing to plug money into it is also not working for a bunch of them, and the tried and true single player games are doing great. As usual. Why you pivoted away from them, who knows? And then this new section, whether I'll keep this or not, I don't know, but there were enough articles that I felt like it needed its own thing. So this is AI shite. And this is just a bunch of articles coming out where the divide or the disconnect between publishers and developers seems pretty clear, pretty obvious. So there's a couple of articles here saying how, from the publisher side of things, that they're going to leverage AI to help creativity or to unlock some bullshit, corpo speak, mostly aimed at the developers. This is Capcom saying it, that they're going to use it to streamline routine tasks and what have you. What that means, they didn't exactly go into detail. Then, on the opposite side of it, you have the developers, creatives basically saying that it's garbage. The Horizon composer saying, I don't know why you would use it to replace human creativity. It's insane. That's what he means. Cool as a toy, but insane that you would actually put this into a product. Darkest Dungeon guys basically don't want to use AI to replace the narrator, even though they could do it. The guy who voiced it, Wayne June, passed away last year. So Darkest Dungeon 2, any kind of new content or whatever, they would have to get a new voice actor to do it. Could you argue with AI? Potentially, but they don't want to because they think it is disrespectful. And the guy did a good enough job that it should be remembered that way. Again, developers having a slightly different opinion rather than the publishers. Casey Hudson, probably best known for Mass Effect, basically saying the same thing. AI is creatively soulless. I don't want to see any of it when it's Fate of the Old Republic. PlayStation, again, speaking to their investors, they see it as a powerful tool. Having these guys already using it, they don't say what they're using it for, which is pretty typical. This kind of thing, saying that it's, the designers focus on it because it's helping do like hair physics and hair textures and what have you. That's not generative AI. That's machine learning. Again, is an issue with marketing conflating all of these things under AI. It's like there are good technologies that have been unfairly lumped into the AI thing, and machine learning is one of them. And then the last one, Neverness to Everness, accused of replacing Gen AI art with more Gen AI art. So they got caught using generative AI art, which is this bottom one with the guy in it. There's also a woman over here, which you can't see it. And they were just replaced it with another. This is like, what are you doing? Like, you were already getting bad press for doing this, and all you did was do something worse. Just either take the fucking billboard down or just put in regular art. How hard would it be to draw a soda can? Anyway, speaking of Neverness to Everness, Iron Mouse, a popular VTuber, was doing a sponsored stream, or was going to do a sponsored stream of Neverness to Everness. I forget exactly which, but alleges that the developers lied to her about the blatant generative AI use. They said that it would be removed in the main game. Again, this is the same billboard thing. This is the apparently this is generative AI. I'm not sure if you necessarily call it that, because it feels like, unless they gave it the image itself and just told it to change some things, I don't know. That could arguably be Photoshop as well. And again, about the soda can, who knows? And I think part of it is also some of the voice clips are also using it as well. They sound a bit robotic. But the point is, she was told it'd be removed. It wasn't. Makes her look bad playing a generative AI game when she's very anti that kind of thing. Now, arguably, I wouldn't have touched it if I saw it was in it at all. And again, this is the usual excuse of placeholders. You make the placeholder glaringly obviously bad, so you know to remove it, and not try to pretend that, oh no, this image was a placeholder that we use generative AI for. No. You put up a stupid texture that has a shitty fucking MS Paint texture on it. That's how you know you need to remove it. But wait, there's more. So developers behind Party Game, what is it called? Animal something. Party Animals, that's it. have a generative AI video contest. And all submissions are meant to be original works, but obviously, if you're using generative AI, they can't. Anyway, they got pretty significant backlash from that. Review bombing of their game in general. AI is not something you should be using, and if you're using it, you better either be very upfront about it or do a better job hiding it. And then finally, in our generative AI thing, I'm wondering if I should have put this in AI shite as well. Anyway, PlayStation 3 emulator devs ask people to stop putting their vibe-coded shit on the repository, because now they're spending more time having to review garbage instead of actually working on the PS3 emulator. And we heard this about a couple of other emulators and a couple of other bigger mods. I think we're also seeing pull requests come in that were clearly vibe coded, and they're basically saying, you're wasting our time because we're having to review this and then object to it because it's shit. Cool. If you ever want a PS3 emulator, stop. Stop fucking vibe coding shit and leave them to their work. Right, anyway, I guess we'll leave Directive 8020. Anyway, that is your news. The 4th, 17th, I think, May 2026. A little bit rushed, as I said, because I do still need to pack. And it is now the day I need to... I have to head to the airport in a couple of hours, so I should probably do that. Anyway, I've been thinking what to do with the news videos going forward, because as you may have noticed, the last couple of ones have been not exactly weekly. They've been 2 weekly, 3 weekly kind of thing. So I'm not really getting the time to go over them as much as I would want to, and I'm missing some things in the articles and misspeaking about certain things, so I'm not having a chance to read it fully, and so on. So I am debating whether to make this a bi-weekly thing instead, or once a month thing instead, or something like that. I don't know. Or maybe just do smaller videos, do smaller snippets on like very specific articles or topics or something like that. I don't know yet. I'm thinking about it. Anyway, that's it from me. Have a good rest of your day, and I'll talk to you guys next time.